Postgame. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome into 5 on the Floor live here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons. This also appears on our podcast feed, so make sure you subscribe there. You get all of our off-day content there as well. I'll give you the floor plan here in a second. Before I do, I want to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. Let's start with Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Played the Bama over tonight. That one actually hit late. We go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Just rated the number one fastest growing sports product in the country. And you can bet everything. In fact, I got something on the FAU and Miami games as we speak right now. So you can also do NHL, MLS, MMA, golf, tennis, all of the other sports. Go to prizepicks.com. Download from Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And use the code 5. I'll tell you about the two other sponsors later in the program, ODM PSI and A Aggressive Insurance. Before we get to that, though, here is the floor plan. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I got Alex Toledo in the darkness there. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We were in the darkness for most of the game. Alex and I were covering this game on playback. Make sure you check that out. I posted at the top of our Twitter feed before every game. That's where you can just come hang out. We were telling Justice Winslow stories and stories about Danny Ainge and anything to distract us during this dog of a game. But we are going to talk about the dog of a game. The Miami Heat, not only do they win, Greg, you said don't give the points on Better Edge tonight. Take Detroit.
You're right.
Actually, Miami wins. They pull away late. But I'm not looking at this as a positive in any real way. First thing, they're playing a team with 16 wins. They've lost to this team before. They've lost to San Antonio. They've lost to Charlotte twice. They just lost to Orlando. They've lost to all these teams that are competing for lottery balls that are going for Wemby. And these games typically go a certain direction for the Heat. They act like they don't give a damn for about 3.5 quarters, like they're better than this team, right? Like they're the one walking on the runway and somebody else is watching them. And then they get to the last 6 minutes and Jimmy and others try to save them. And recently, it hasn't worked. It didn't work against Orlando. It didn't work against Chicago. It didn't work against San Antonio. It didn't work against Charlotte. Tonight, they got away with it. That's all I'm going to say. They got away with it. They clamped down defensively. And Tyler made some really, really difficult shots that make you wonder why he can't make the easy ones. Greg, what do you take from this?
I think you sum it up in that it's a situation where you're not necessarily walking away from this game and saying anything changed. In fact, most of the game they were down. I saw a ridiculous spread on Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN and you'll get $20 to play instantly on Better Edge. They had the Heat or Detroit as a 6.5 point favorite. If you were to take that plus 800 odds, and there were a lot of times throughout this game where the Detroit was up 7 or more. And so it didn't look as ridiculous. They did cover, as you said. But it was ugly. And I think that like essentially what Detroit did is what Detroit's been doing when they've been losing all these games. I think they've lost 15 out of 16 or some crazy number like that now, is that right when it's go time towards the end, they kind of give up because it's time to lose. And that's in the plans at this current moment. And you saw a young team implode. Tyler had a huge, I thought that 27-foot 3-point shot off the Jimmy Butler assist was a big one late for them. So, I mean, obviously you like to see the team get a victory, but you're right here. Like this is a situation where they're 2 games back in the loss column from Brooklyn. They have New York coming up. They have Brooklyn coming up. Win those games. And then maybe we'll start to talk about games, wins that we're walking away feeling impressed by.
Yeah, Alex, I'm going to let you talk about the game here real quick, and then we're going to talk about the standings. So, Alex, game, your thoughts. I'm just saying, we were just watching this. I can't look. There was the Kevin Love thing, obviously, where that situation was kind of crazy, and there were some other things that happened during the game, but ultimately this was forgettable. So just give me something you liked. Let's do that.
Okay, something I liked that I was just looking at here was you got 20 combined free throw attempts between Jimmy and Bam. If that was something that happened more often, I would feel great about them, or not great, but a lot better about them. I think, no shade to Bam. I just think, if he was getting to the line more often like that, it would make things easier for them and their bad offense. I think everybody kind of did what they needed to do. I think Tyler had a bad start tonight, really made up for it in the second half and in the fourth quarter. Like it was kind of classic Heat basketball. They came out and started extremely complacent, lethargic, whatever adjective you want to use there. The Pistons had like a 154 offensive rating after that first quarter. So it was just I think a bad start that kind of had them, they weren't far behind, but they were behind for most of the game. And so for a team that's bad when they're healthy, really bad, for, to be in that situation against them without their number one pick in Cade Cunningham, who, he's their best player. And then you have Bogdanovich, who was also out, who lit up the Heat last time and has had me thinking about him ever since. But, this is what they've done. So it's not surprising at all. I'm just glad, you got to be glad that they were able to come out with a win and not blow it, because that's just kind of where they're at this point. It seemed like it was another game that was going down with, the other Pistons game, the Spurs won, the Hornets won. You were naming them. There's just been so many. So it felt like they might have been going down that path again, but luckily they never let it get out of control. I'm not even sure this Pistons roster is able, is capable of making it out of control. And they closed it out. They had a great fourth quarter and, really took control there. I think everything else, they were really just kind of hanging around until they turned it up in the fourth.
All right, we are going to get into a rotation matter here related to Oladipo. So before we do, I want to introduce the sponsor here, ODMPSI.com. That's ODM Performance Solutions. We mention this one all the time in the context of if you run a business, you want to reach out to them because they can help you find the right employee. ODMPSI.com. They're based in Pembroke Pines. They service all of South Florida, though. They service all high-level businesses and employees. They work with supermarkets around the country. That's a specialty, as is banks. But we also want to tell you, if you are an employee looking for a job, they can connect you. It's like a headhunter service. They can connect you directly to that job and to that employer. So check out ODM. That's ODMPSI.com, ODMPSI.com. The performance solution of the game, apparently for Eric Spoelstra, was don't play Victor Oladipo again. So, Greg, on this, it seems kind of like it's Love or Robinson who plays at this point. Struess minutes kind of up and down, but it seems like it's also Lowry or Oladipo who plays. Kyle was back, so Vic didn't play.
That's what it came down to. You see Spoelstra trying to figure just combinations that work, and tonight he essentially played 8 guys. I mean, the Yurt minutes and the Highsmith minutes were few and far between. I think 4 combined by both players. So you're essentially down to 8 guys, right? And we've talked about like Zeller being another option. Maybe at some point, but Kevin Love ended up, even with his limited time, getting that really bloody cut to the back of the head in 23 minutes to get 8 boards. I mean, that's the kind of stuff they need from him. Lowry with 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Like that's the kind of stuff. I ultimately it's the Detroit Pistons, but you need to see these veterans start to do these things. Caleb Martin had another good game off the bench. I think ultimately that Oladipo could get squeezed only because he is just something went wonky with his shot selection. And just like in the last month, that has been the part of his game that has suffered most. And I think that like you can look past occasionally him taking one of those shots if the defensive stuff is all there. But if you're not really getting the defensive stuff at a real high level to then get those step backs and some of the ill-advised shots, it's not going to work. So he's on thin ice, and I didn't think we'd get to that place. I don't think anyone did, considering where we thought Oladipo might finish, maybe just, a few weeks ago.
We were talking about why his shot selection got wonky. We're talking about this on playback. I mean, my theory on it is he came back twice. He's come back 3 times, actually, from setbacks this season. And Alex was talking about it. Just doesn't look like he knew where he fit anymore. Like the train kind of moved on without him again. And he doesn't seem to trust his body as much with some of the attacks to the basket. So it just became, let's just chuck threes. And I also feel like teams kind of figured out, like, that's the guy we should leave open all the time. and that he's not going to try to attack. So, I mean, sometimes an open look is not a good look because it's the look that the other team wants you to take. It feels like it got there. All right, we're going to talk standings here in a second. Before we do mention our last sponsor of the show, you can always find her here on the streams, insurancebylynette.com. That's 2 N's, 2 T's. Insurancebylynette.com is aggressive insurance. She can get you all kinds of different insurance, whether it's life insurance, rental insurance, or, of course, car insurance. If you do not have a good driving record, she's the person to go to. Go to insurancebylynette.com. That's insurancebylynette.com. 2 N's, 2 T's. Alejandro producing for us tonight. He's at the World Baseball Classic, so I understand not getting that up. But, again, everybody knows that one from us at this point. Insurancebylynette.com. All right, so let's look at the standings here before we close. We said we're not going to do a long episode for a lot of reasons. First, this game really didn't warrant it, but also we got some good college basketball on right now with local teams. FAU and Miami are both playing. So we want to let people get to that tonight, hopefully that they can keep going and people will actually start to pay attention in South Florida. Let me just ask you a question off the subject here. Why do you think college basketball has never picked up in South Florida? Because we're always like 49th out of 50. In ratings, and yet it became a basketball town, but with the exception of a couple of Miami teams, it's never really clicked.
No, I know, and the Canes have been good. The program is good, and it's really weird. It shows that it is really Heat specific when it comes to basketball. It's fun to see the Canes get these runs, but you're right. That has been a weird thing that has not translated the same excitement. It's a basketball town, but it's a Heat basketball town.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the Canes basketball team has been better than the football team of late. And so it still hasn't translated. All right, let's get to the standings here, and we're going to start doing more of this, just kind of watch where these teams are going. It makes you sick that they played the way they did in Chicago because they'd be tied right now with the Nets. I mean, they blew that opportunity. We could talk about so many different games, but that's the most recent one. 39-34, the Nets are 39-32, so 2 back in the loss column, even though they're 1 back in the standings. Nets have lost 3 straight. We knew this would be a more challenging run for them. They had the good win in Minnesota that we didn't expect. I mean, it feels like they're there for the taking, but I don't. But Alex, I think the thing is we just don't trust this Heat team to play well consistently enough to catch and pass them.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. It's just cautious, somewhat optimism, because it's not even full cautious optimism at this point. Because I'm not really that optimistic. Like, I think they're in a position where they can get out of the play-in. But like you said, I just don't have a lot of trust in this team to pull off a stretch of games where they're winning a lot more than they're losing, and that's just kind of what it comes down to. There's 9 games left in the season. You're a game and a half behind Brooklyn, but you played 2 more games than them. And yeah, even with them losing, you just gotta hope that they keep losing because I just don't think the Heat have shown you this season that they can put together those stretches of just winning a bunch of games in a row. And they do have some easier ones coming up. So, we've obviously seen it. We saw it tonight, but this week specifically is just so important. You have to win the Knicks and Nets games. You have to. Obviously, they're not going to catch up to the Knicks at number 5 or anything like that, but what are we doing? What are we doing at this point? Are you trying to get out of the play-in? Are you trying to avoid the team that went to the finals, playing them in the first round? Can you get a matchup that you'd like better? And I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet a lot of money that the Heat would prefer the Sixers matchup over the Celtics, right? I think that's a fair thing to say. And that's without knowing any of them or what they're thinking. I would bet a lot of money that they would prefer that matchup. And, I do think that maybe some of them are like, oh, whatever, we could play the Celtics. We could beat the Celtics. That's fine. That's how they're supposed to think. But they can get out of this. They don't have to do this whole play-in thing where you got to play an extra game or potentially 2 if you lose the first one. They can avoid it. All they have to do is win these games versus lesser opponents and put together multiple quarters where they're not eating crap. Like tonight was just a perfect example. And it just happens every game at this point. That first quarter where the Pistons were getting a lot of easy buckets. Then in the third, again, the Pistons, I think, got some easy ones. And it's just things like that where when their focus comes out, and that's just, that's the recipe for a disaster. And when disaster strikes, no. But
when disaster strikes, reach out to Water Cleanup. When you got the schmutz, they got the guts. All right, so you kind of have half guts here, I will say.
Yeah.
Greg, that's another of our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida. We appreciate Michael Robert and his entire team. Greg, your guts level right now, Alex seems like he's a 4 or 5 out of 10. Where's your guts level right now that they get the plan? They can get out of the plan, where they're going to lose to Toronto, by the way, if they're stuck there. Go ahead.
I'll say it's a 3.05 right now. That's probably where we're at. But that could change quickly. If they get the 2 against New York and Brooklyn coming up, I feel like that will be enough they'll squeak into that 6 spot. And as much as I thought that was going to be a matchup against Philly, now it looks like it could end up being Boston, who thought you wanted to avoid all of a sudden. So we'll see. I am not feeling great at the moment, but the guts meter can go up quickly if they get the games coming up.
I didn't even realize that the Sixers and Celtics were tied in the standings, and the Sixers have the tiebreaker.
Sixers have been the best team in the East now for about 2 months. I mean, they've been right there with Milwaukee. So,
and by the way, the Raptors thing, like he would not play the Raptors in the play-in. They would play the Bulls.
No.
The 7 plays the 10, no?
No, 7 plays the 8. 7 plays the 8. 9 plays the 10, and then and then the loser of the 7-8 game plays the winner of the 9-10 game for the 8 spot. That's how it works. So they very well could see the Raptors in a play-in situation to get eliminated. I think that's very possible. I don't trust. Look, any of those teams. I mean, Washington is no good. Okay, but Atlanta, Toronto. I mean, do I trust the Heat completely in those games? More against Atlanta than Toronto, to be honest. But really not against either. I'll say this: my guts meter is about 4 out of 10 right now. I think it is set up for them well. I just don't trust them. I mean, I think that's the thing. I will say this though: it has set up well in the sense of they're coming home with a couple of days off to prepare for the Knicks on Wednesday night. I mean, that's good. There's no back-to-back. Everybody who needs to be healthy right now is healthy. There's no excuses right now. Like, there's just no excuses. Like, they put themselves in this position. It's almost like the season has become a microcosm of their games where they kind of screw around, fall behind. Well, now there's 6 minutes left in the Heat season, and Jimmy's coming back in with a 3-point deficit. That's how I feel that this is right now, okay? So can he carry them to the finish line? Because that's what they're going to need at this stage. I don't trust Bam and Tyler to be consistent. I'm sorry, and that's an evaluation that's going to have to be made over the summer. But Jimmy's coming back into the Heat season with 6 minutes and 17 seconds left. And we've been waiting for Spo to put him back in. He's finally back in. Can he carry them to the finish line? That's where we're at. Thanks to our sponsors, A-Aggressive Insurance, ODM, PSI.com, and also Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. If you want to see more of me, and I don't know why you would after I've been on pregame, playback, and this today, I'll be on WSBN at about 11:30 a.m. wearing a different shirt. Have a good night, everyone.